Yeah, so we've just been talking about URLs, and I was not recording it, so sorry. I'm happy if you come to office hours. I'm happy to say everything I said then.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, all right. So I was copying where we left off from Wednesday. So I copied like the whole React app folder to day 6. And then what do I need to do to start the React app? It's the command. So I'm going to go to my terminal, navigate to module 4, navigate to day 6, and then I've got my weather React router folder. So I'm going to cd into that. And then now if I want to start it, what do I do? This command.
I know it starts with npm, right?
It does. And then start. Yeah. npm start.
Take it.
Yeah, very good. I made tacos this morning and the cheese was a little old, I think. So if I have to stop at some point during this class, that's why. Breakfast tacos.
Eggs, potatoes.
That's exactly what was on it. I'm sorry, you've never heard of breakfast tacos?
And breakfast burritos.
Yeah, I mean, but also breakfast tacos. Yeah.
Like you crunchy shells specifically.
No, regular flour, regular.
That's a breakfast burrito.
Yeah. I agree.
Nah.
Sorry.
You've been to Big Truck Tacos for breakfast?
I think they just forgot to roll it up. It's not done yet.
Somebody, come on, people have had breakfast tacos,
Oh,
right? Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's weird.
So it's a-
Yeah. Okay, so here's where we left off last time. So we've got we'd used React Bootstrap to make it look a little bit better. So our button looks pretty good, and our inputs look pretty good. See how they kind of highlight when you click on them? It's cool. And so when we search, we had our cool spinner, right? And then when you do the search, the only thing we're displaying from the data that comes back is just the city that the search was for. So remember, if you want to kind of see what's going on, you can open the console and go to the network tab. And then whenever you run the query, you can see it happen here. So this is the query that we sent. You can click on it and you can see you can go to the headers tab and see here's the URL we sent our query to. And then you can go to preview, and that shows you the response that we received. And so we are pulling from the location key, we're pulling the name. So we're doing, data, weather data dot location dot name, and that's what's showing right here. Okay, so if we do this, like if someone puts in 73106 and then puts in, it's not letting me get rid of that 0. Oh, it's because it's a number?
Did it ever let you get more than 5 days?
I know, no, it didn't. But just pretend it is. So if we do this, so here's where we are. We're at the root of our page, right? So we're just at localhost 3000. But when we actually deploy this, and let's say we bought OKCoder's weatheramazingapp.com or whatever, and we deploy it, it would be https://okcodersamazingweatherapp.com, and then that's it. So this is the root. So localhost 3000 is the equivalent of like just the root of the page. So if we, put in some information and then hit search, like we could update the URL at the point that you hit search, right? Or before that, since we have default values, but let's just say we do it whenever they hit search. So we could change the URL at that point. What might the URL look like in that situation?
Questions. Days.
And it wouldn't actually be Oklahoma
I
City.
guess if it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, so we could just do that. So it could look like, and we pick what we want, right? So days equals 5, and then location equals 73106. So that could be it. And also this is the only page we have, so it's fine that it's the root. But if you've got like other pages, this might potentially be like localhost 3000 / like forecast or something like that. But we don't have more than one page, so it's fine for it to just be the root for now. So good, yeah. So then when someone copies this and sends it, we then have to do the work to parse what's in the URL and accurately reflect it in our app. And then potentially like auto run the search. So right now the search only happens if you click search, but we could potentially, if those parameters are present, we may potentially like go ahead and kick off the query at that point.
So it wouldn't query for every element that you're typing in that parameter, like as you type in 7.3, like it wouldn't start querying every time you did it that way.
Like submitting a search or updating the URL.
Submitting the search, like, isn't that what you're saying? Rather than click submit search, like, as long as that parameter's there, do it.
Only so one thing we could do, so you could do that, like you can set up this so that like every time you type it, like maybe it could submit the search right then, or it could like wait a second and then do it. Just called like a debounce. Or like, so you can set it up that way. And I'm sure you've worked with, that's what happens when you use Google search. Like every time you type, it's sending a query. So you could do it that way. But we can also say like only on the page load. Like, so only like once the page loads, see if there's anything in the URL. If there is, submit that search. But then after that, just wait till they hit the search button to do another search. So it's up to us how we want to do that. Is that what you were asking? Okay. Okay, so that's one thing we can do with the URL. We can also like break up this site if we want to a little bit. So we can add, like there's like our weather API. Has a few different endpoints we can hit to get different types of information. So we can get real-time weather, like just the current weather, and then we can get the forecast, and we can also get historical, sports data. I don't know. So like one way we may make this site is it might have like a home page, which is just like the current weather based off your location, your browser location. So we can ask the browser to let us get the location of the user, parse that, and then just display the current weather, like at that exact moment on the home page. And then like we could have a nav bar, and we could have like 10-day forecasts or historical weather. Like it's two different options. So like home, and then like forecast, historical weather. So if you didn't hit like forecast, it would then like take you to a new page that would be like /forecast. And it would still have the nav bar, but then the actual page would be different than the home page. So like you can start to see like, oh, okay, so based off the URL, the entire page may be some like totally different content. Just like when we're on Pitchfork, like the news section, the bar, the top bar is the same, but the actual content here is different. And when you hit reviews, like the bar is the same, but the actual content is different. So we need to have that same sort of functionality, which is like, you know, here's sort of the main outline of like the, you know, the footer or the header and the footer of the site. But then we need some way to completely change what information is in the body of it based off the URL. So that's what we'll try and set up with the time we have today is I think that. So let's add an app bar. Let's have a home, a forecast, and a historical page. So we'll have 3 pages for our site. We probably won't get to all that today, but we can potentially like stub out like some of those. So it just shows a blank page for now, or just says like forecast with no actual functionality quite yet. Okay. So let's start pulling in React Router. So typically, whenever you're using a library for the first time, you're following the docs, and typically you're looking for like installation or quick start to get going. Often I'll use quick start, and then if that doesn't get me where I need to go, then I start looking at other pages. But often quick start is like enough to get going. So the first thing we need to do is add this library. So you just copy and paste this. So I'll go back. I've got it running here, so I either need to kill this process to run the command, because this is like a server that's running, or I can make a new tab. You can also like split screen your terminal, which I just did. Okay, so like I navigated back to the project. So you can see my PWD is curriculum module 4, day 6, weather, React Router. And then now I paste that command npm install React Router DOM at version 6. There's more. This is the 6th version, major version of this library. And you can do this at number syntax on any library that you install, because they're all versioned. And so often you just leave off the version and it just takes the latest version to install. But sometimes it's good to specify. And they specified it, so I'm not arguing with that. Like, I'm doing what they told me to do. And like, it's adding a bunch of code, and like the project's trying to recompile, and it's like not done adding the code yet. So it's like failing, I guess. It looks like it's still broken, so I'm just gonna restart it. Okay, and it works that time. It's just something you get used to, like restart it, it's not working. All right, so we've added React Router. I go back to the docs, and then there's this. So this may have confused you when you were reading this. this is like a full example where they're like importing React and like hooking it into the root element and then calling root render. With create React app, all of this is sort of already scaffolded for you. So in React app, when you do create React app, if you guys have looked at all at the other files that are in here, the index.js here is where that's happening. So they got, import React DOM, React DOM.create root, document.get element by ID root, and then root.render. And then you can see they render app here. They import app from app, which is this. So like this code here, the React DOM, create root, root render, like that's all happening in index.js automatically for you. And so typically what we've done is we've always worked from, we don't need to do that every time, right? We make an app, right? They just take care of it for you. And we just start coding from the app.js. That's sort of our main entry point that we start worrying about as a developer is app.js. So what they want you to do though, to set up React Router so that it can work for you and do what you need it to do, they say, hey, make sure to import some stuff from React Router DOM and then add this browser router thing.
Sitemap type stuff.
I don't know if I know that term.
Type is like pages of a website, how they relate to each other, like title pages. Not like this. This is the navigational structure.
This right here, this route piece, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so what this is saying is, basically, this is a common thing you'll see in React. If you're trying to add something to your React app that's going to have like a global presence, like a theme for Bootstrap or React Router in this case, if we want React Router to work everywhere in our app, and then there's plenty of other examples of this, what you'll typically see is you're going to end up taking something that you import from the library that they're going to tell you about in the docs, and you just like wrap the whole app in it. And what that means is like, we're going to take app and put this browser router as like the wrapping parent element of everything else. And if you had like 4 things that need to do that, you would just do like the first thing, and then the second thing, and then the third thing, and then the fourth thing, and then your stuff. Like you just keep wrapping stuff so that the parent element is like going to be this global thing. So like that might have been confusing, but let's just do it. So let's get browser router from React Router DOM. And here is our whole app. This like, here's our root of our app is this div class name equals app. So that's the very first thing that we put into the page. It's like this parent, and our entire app is going to be a child of that parent. We're just going to make browser router the new parent. We're just going to wrap our entire app with it. You can also do this in the index.js. Like we could wrap app with it if we wanted to. You'll see people do that too. Both are fine. So actually, let's do it here. It's going to be a little bit cleaner. Yeah. So I'm just doing what they tell me to do, which is, grab this browser router, stick it here. There we go. So add browser router, and then make app the child of browser router. And it's like, yo, I don't know what that is. So we need to import it. And we can see their import right here. Import browser router from React Router DOM. And by the way, we haven't explicitly taught you guys this syntax for importing or how to export stuff so that you can import it with the syntax. That's in the pre-work for Wednesday. There's a video and an article that explain it. So I'm gonna copy this, paste it, and then we're not at this moment doing the route map or site map yet. So I'm gonna delete those two things. So now I've got, so I just said, hey, I want to use React Router. And for me to use React Router, they tell me to essentially, globally add this browser router thing to the app. And the way you do that in React world, like every app that needs something global follows this style, which is like wrap your app with it.
So on those imports, like going back to that comment that she had the other day about the bootstrap stuff, like you have to like import the individual, I don't know what the terminology is.
Components, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Like that is bizarre to me too, because like on a website, you would just call on a CDN all of Bootstrap and have access to all of the modules within it.
Yeah.
But here you have to individually import each one, and that seems super strange. But like if you were to just import everything from it, like I saw in there, there's like an asterisk. Where you
Import
can
star
import all one
as,
down.
yeah.
Is there, like, does that make an app non-performant or like,
It really depends on what you're importing.
like would that be something you could do with Bootstrap where you just import everything from React Bootstrap and then you have access to it all and you don't have to individually call each one out?
You probably could, yeah. Most people aren't gonna do that though.
But why? I mean, that's what my code versus having to individually import each component.
Yeah. Well, it's like, so it's actually kind of nice when, like, if you're just reading the code and then you see something like browser router and you're like, where did that come from? And it's not imported up here. You're like, what else?
Okay.
You're like, what the hell is browser router? I don't even know what that is.
Packages might
Yeah.
not be as well known as Bootstrap.
Yeah, so if you said like import stars as bootstrap or something, you'd most likely, if you did that, you would still have to do like bootstrap.footer or bootstrap.spinner or something like that. So it may still be clean to read potentially, like when you saw it, but there is no, like when you get to stuff like this, you don't ever really see something in the global scope that's just magically there without it being imported somehow. Even if you did like an import star as bootstrap, you would still have to say like bootstrap dot something to reference it. Yeah. You can't just say like litter the global scope with this thing somehow. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. You'll like it eventually. Yeah,
Yeah.
eventually. Yeah.
I worked with Nuxt, and basically everything in the entire application, like all of your components, they are just made in the global scope. So you never import them. So then whenever you're working on something and you can just say, okay, here is my nav bar, but then you're never importing the nav bar. So when you're like, okay, what is the nav bar doing? You have to go just like look it up because you never see where that component is coming from. It's just available. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there may, I mean,
Different way of thinking about stuff.
yeah.
I mean, like as a developer, reading other developers' code and stuff, it is really nice to see where everything is coming from and how everything is working and everything's very explicit.
Okay, so we added this. That's all we've done so far. Good question though. I love questions. So that didn't do anything to the app. So it's in there. It's like configured, like we're set up and ready to use React Router. But just by doing that, everything's the same. Like it didn't break anything. Like the mere fact that that's the parent of everything now, it didn't really change anything quite yet. Like we haven't really hooked into it yet. But the fact that we're not getting, I am getting some error, but that's because of some random error. But we're not getting any errors or anything after doing that. All right, so what else do we have to do? So we've got browser router, but if we want to sort of conditionally render stuff, we add this routes component that we import, and then we, inside that as a child, we then sort of say like, okay, if the page is the root, so you can see that's path equals slash. If the page is the root, render, and you decide. Like for that, let's do this component. Element equals that component, the app component. And then this is kind of funky. Notice that we're doing like children inside that. I don't really want you to think about that yet though. Ignore that this is like a child of this. So if the path is slash teams, then let's render the teams component. And so this route thing here allows us to specify which components we want to render based off of what the URL is. That's all it does. That is like the main stint of what React Router is going to help us do. There's a bunch of other stuff we can use it for that we'll see, but like that's kind of the main use case of it, is to just say based off the URL, render this component and not other components. So let's use these things inside. So not here. In their example, they did it all in just sort of one file, just because they need to give you a quick start example. But for us, like we're going to do it, we're going to break it up a little bit. So we're going to go to app. And then here is where we're going to sort of decide how we want to structure our page. So I'm going to move some stuff around real quick. So I called this component forecast. I'm going to change it to forecast display, and then change this export, and then rename this file. Which means inside app, I need to update that. I broke that. Oh, LA Auto did that for me. It's pretty cool, right? See that? So when I renamed that file, it was like VS Code was like, I'll rename that for you. I have that as the default. It might ask you if you did that. It would probably have asked you, but I told it to always do that for me. So then I'm going to change this as well to be a different name, and then this is now forecast display. So I didn't change anything except for renaming it. And I did that because I want this whole, like the whole, like all the code inside app.js right now is for the forecast, but we want 3 different pages now. And so I'm going to move what's in app.js to a component called forecast, because it's like the full forecast page. And so when the URL is forecast, I want like to have it use that component, the forecast component. And then this is where you can be a clean coder if you wanted to. You don't have to do this, but you can start organizing stuff. So you can start, and the way you organize stuff is with folders. That's it. That's the only tool you have to organize things is by folders. So I'm going to add a folder called forecast. Within that folder, I'm going to put the forecast display. And then I'm going to make a new file in there called forecast.js. That's going to be a function that is called forecast. It's going to return each one that just says forecast for now. Export default forecast. I'm gonna immediately delete this actually, so I don't know why I did that. But so this new forecast component is where I want to put all my existing app.js stuff. So I'm gonna go here. And I'm not gonna copy this stuff. This is sort of like, this is what's giving us that pretty background. This like div and this header. And so I'm just gonna take this form down to the forecast display piece. Delete that and move it to here. Oh, crap. To here. And then I don't have all those imports that we did. So I'm going to go up here. Notice these are all grayed out because they're not being used anymore, so which means I need to move them over to here. And then also this, all this stuff, and the on submit are for the forecast page. So we need to move that too to here. And then we don't have, this is also something we need to move over. Okay, so now there's nothing gray here anymore. And there's no errors on this page. So I'll save it. And then this is looking good, I think. Yep, so no errors here. Okay, so you may not have followed it, but I just kind of restructured some stuff. I like moved, we had all of our logic of our entire page was all in app.js. We had moved some of the logic to a component called forecast before that was like taking in the data and displaying it. So I renamed that one, and then I moved the stuff we had in app.js to a new forecast component. So you can see like in our structure here, we've got this folder called forecast that's, you know, got two components related to figuring out what data you want based off the form, querying for it, and displaying it. So those are these two components. And then we've got our app.js, which right now isn't doing much at all. It just has our div and our header and the classes connected to them, and then an H3. So now if we look at our page, it doesn't really have anything on it except for this weather H3, because that's all that the app is rendering. Like we have those two other components, but nothing is importing them and putting them on the page right now. Like we'd have to, like the current app, the like root entry for us into what shows up on the page is only returning this stuff and nothing else. And so even though we've defined all that other stuff, it's not actually hooked into the page. Okay. So the reason we're doing that though is because we want more than one page, and we want to set up the sitemap. And so we want to add routes to this. Routes comes from React Router DOM. So I'm going to go to our index.js and copy this import that we had from it here. And then we're not importing browser router, we're importing routes. So I'll change that to that. So this is like another like configure thing. So we've got like the whole browser router at the top, which adds some functionality to the app. And now we're adding, hey, we want to set up a sitemap. And so this is like the sitemap parent. And then that parent needs to know, okay, I'm going to look at the URL, and then based off the URL, you need to tell me what components you want me to render. And the way you tell it about that is by adding route children to it, which is another thing you import. And I only know that because of their docs, right? Just by looking at their docs. So if we want to show the forecast only when we're on the forecast URL, what do you guys think I would put here? So we have a forecast component, and we just need to say, we just need to look at these docs and extrapolate from the docs what we need to specifically do. So we have a forecast component, and then we want to only show it if the path is forecast. So based off like this line right here, can anybody sort of extrapolate what we would put most likely?
Just
This is too
replace
small.
where it says to forecast, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then, and for both cases.
Element.
Yeah. And then this would be our forecast component. Yeah. So yeah, route path equals forecast. And this could be forecast slash new or forecast slash days, or, you know, like it doesn't have to be just one path. It can be like a longer one. And then so if the path is forecast, then we want you to add this element to the page, that element being the forecast element. And that's not imported. So I need to do import forecast from, and this is a folder in here, from forecast. So from, you know, /forecast. And some people would have made this a lowercase folder. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever the project did. You just keep doing what they did. And so since I did that on accident, really, I wasn't really thinking about it. Everyone else that works in this project is going to make all their folders capital from now on. And then they'll be like, Zach likes capital folders. And I'll be like, I just did it on accident. Same with the component name. I think most people make components capital. Like you can see the app.js is capital.
What about the route where it defines how you separate the paths? Like, is that important? Or
Oh, this is a bug. Hold on. I jacked this up. Hey, what is that? Okay, sorry, what did you say?
so like in the docs on row 15, where it defines the path,
Mm-hmm.
slash to,
That just means like the route. Like if there is no,
so you don't have to include that in here to say that. Like, I didn't know if that's gonna tell it, okay, when we go to the forecast portion of this path, append to the end of the URL /. That's happening automatically by router.
no, that's not. And they provide stuff for that.
Okay.
So they provide something called a link. So like the way that you would get to the forecast page is by clicking the, like if we add an app bar, and when I say app bar, I just mean like this top thing.
Right.
That's what these are, links to go somewhere. And so we'll add that so that, and we'll have a one that says forecast. And when you click it, it'll change the URL. And then once the URL changes, the React router knows when the URL changes to trigger a refresh. And so React will then refresh, and then based off the URL being changed, it'll then add that component that we've set to render when the URL is whatever.
So it's gonna do that automatically. You don't have to add additional code to tell it to do that.
That's what it does for us. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we just haven't quite gotten to that point in the docs yet. They show it down here. Yep. Yeah. So but we did successfully say, and we don't have anything for the root.
I have defined it in index.
That I wanted you guys to kind of ignore because that is like, so you can see they're like nesting. See how this is a child of this route? Yeah, don't worry about it. That's kind of confusing, and you don't get to it till you have more advanced use cases. So like the index is a thing that happens if you are a child of another route, and not in our current case, which is just we're only gonna have a routes and then route. No like route inside a route. So just ignore the index thing for now. So we don't have a root route, and that's why, but we don't actually have a use case for adding one quite yet because we've had this H3 showing up. So like when like all of this stuff shows up on the page for the root, all of this shows up no matter what, because it's not a part of a route definition. Only the stuff inside this routes is going to be conditionally shown based off the URL. So like no matter what page we're on, we're still going to see,
So if we,
well, I got
and
an
I
error,
probably
but
need to wait for you to just finish it. So that like will it just render the forecast portion cap under that weather heading on the same
Yes.
page? Okay.
yes,
That's where.
that's right.
That's the part I was.
So I have an error, so I need to figure out what that is. So it's saying, okay, so inside forecast, this component. So, well, first of all, you guys should be able to read this error and understand it. So there's problems. The problem was in the forecast file at line, and this doesn't always match up. So I don't think it is. Let's see if it's line 9. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not line 9. So, so sometimes that's going to throw you off, and you're going to have to be like, you're going to have to be able to spot when it's not accurate. I don't know why it's not always accurate. It drives me crazy. But so read the full error first. So module not found can't resolve forecast display. Okay, so let's look here. I actually don't know why it couldn't.
Of where the error is when it's off, right? Like it's one of the lines before that is causing that error.
Yeah. But what's funny is so VS Code normally tells you if there's an error as well. And it's not. And this looks right to me. So oh, no, it doesn't. So I don't know why it didn't auto update it for me, but we're in the forecast folder right now, our forecast component. Okay. So when this is saying ./forecast, there is no forecast folder inside the forecast folder. We're already in the forecast folder. And so we just need to do ./forecast display. Normally VS Code would tell you about this. I don't know why it's not. All right, so yeah, now we're good. So so we're on the root, and we're only seeing weather. So when we look at app.js, we've got this H3 and this div and this header. That's what's giving us the blue background. That's what's centering our H3. In the center of the page is some class stuff inside app header. So all we're seeing is that H3. Then we have our routes, and the routes is saying, hey, are we on page forecast? No, so don't show this. And then there's nothing else there. And so it doesn't put anything on the page. So the only thing we see is weather, but if I manually change this to /forecast, now we get weather and then it renders that whole component for us. Yeah. And then if we go back, just weather. So yeah, there was a little bit of setup. The setup might have been confusing, but like it's done. You don't have to do it ever again. And now it's like, oh, I want to conditionally render something based off the URL. Just add another route entry and you're good. So based off what I described, we want app bar, you know, whatever is going to be for our home page, and then a forecast page, and then like a historical page. So we'll add, you know, another route for the historical. We may or may not, well, yeah, if we're gonna have like a default page, which was, I said the default page could be like just the current weather for wherever you are. So we would add a route that is for route that is gonna do that. And then we've got the forecast route, and then we'd have the historical route. So we'll have 3 routes, the home, and then the other 2 pages. And then where do you think the app bar would go? So we always want the app bar on the page no matter what.
So
Yeah, in this view, outside of this routes, like up here where weather is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, everybody in the call good? Everybody following?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we actually want to look at React Bootstrap now. And then I want to find an app bar. So they should provide one for me, hopefully. Navs. So you'll sometimes see it called app bar or nav. Mm.
It's slash
Oh, they have an app bar? Oh, yeah, look. There we go. Yeah, because I didn't like that one. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is what we want. So you can see this is sort of doing what you're kind of used to, which is like typically you've got like the logo or something at the top left. And when you click that logo, it's convention to go back to the root of the page, right? And then different links. We probably want our app bar to be like, well, I don't know. If we're going to keep this darker background, then we probably want a lighter nav bar, app bar thing. Or like, I guess a black one would do okay. But let's just go with this starter one. So you can see, you know, we're going to import a nav bar. This is doing, hey, background light. So they like set up some default coloring and stuff for you. Like you could add your own CSS that colors that component the way you want. But like this is just to get you going quickly. They have this. And then I don't know what this is. Expand large. I'm guessing it like collapses. Yeah, so it'll collapse into this. And then if the page is large, based off the React or Bootstrap definition of large, it'll expand out. And then there's a container, and then navbar brand, and then I don't know what navbar toggle is. Navbar collapse makes sense because that's what's probably doing that functionality to give us the hamburger thing. And then nav.link, nav.link, and then we don't want this drop down. So we'll copy all this and then we'll delete the drop down. And that is roughly what we need. But then we gotta get this to kind of somehow play nicely with React Router. So that's like the job of you as the dev. You've decided to use Bootstrap and you've decided to use React Router. Bootstrap doesn't know you're using React Router. So you got to figure out how to like marry the two things together. But this is where we need to start. So, okay, I'm going to copy all of this. And this is where you get to decide as a developer what you want to do here as well. We can just stick all this here, or we can make a navbar component and render that navbar component right here. May clean things up a little bit. So you get to decide. You can stick it here, get it working, then move it out, or you can move it out from the get-go. I typically would be like, I just want to get this thing working, and I would do this, and then I would move it out. So let's delete this weather H3. That's not really serving us anymore. And then it didn't paste perfectly. You know what? We're probably going to need this to be outside of the header because the header is like centering stuff on the page. So I'm going to move it here. It doesn't know what navbar is, so I need to import that. So I'm going to do import navbar from React Bootstrap /navbar. Oh, is it capital? I guess so. So it's not mad about that anymore, but then we need container. And you two are like, oh my God, kill me.
A little bit,
Yeah. But again, if this was a TypeScript project, I would do one command and I would say add all missing imports, and it would just do it for me. So like I don't normally have to, like when you work on like TypeScript is something you guys will learn eventually. It's just like a better version of JavaScript. And we just haven't had time to learn it quite yet.
You show on the auto imports. That's what I have to do.
What?
Just like go to a squiggly and then delete the last letter and then type the last letter.
But it's not doing it.
Really?
It's not giving me. It's not. I mean, I'm assuming it's a TypeScript thing. Like it doesn't understand how to import from Bootstrap. I don't know what's going on. Ugh. And then add. Why isn't it mad about dropdown? Oh, it is. Notice it is doing some of what we talked about earlier, where I imported only navbar, and then it's like it's referencing this like navbar.toggle and navbar.collapse. Like sometimes you'll see that where like one import, you don't like import all the stuff, you'll reference like a sub thing on it. Yeah. Okay, everything's imported. We don't want the drop down, so I'm just going to delete that. Oh, and I imported that and I didn't need to. So let's go delete that. Okay. Let's just see if it's working without changing it. Okay, so we got a header. It's collapsed until it gets it's probably because I'm zoomed in so much. Yeah, that, I think, yeah, so let's try expand small. Bam. But that means it may not collapse. And yeah, no, actually, that's pretty good. Okay. So we only have 2 links. We don't have like a ton, so it doesn't need to collapse that soon. All right. So this should say weather. This should say forecast. This should say historical. And it has hrefs, but let's not worry about that quite yet. So all right, so that's working pretty good. So let's look at React Router real quick though. So if you're going to use React Router, you need to use its navigation stuff so it knows when you're trying to navigate. So just like when we're using React, we're like, we have to use state and like use its method, its hook for changing state, so it knows when we're doing it, so it can do stuff for us. And that's sort of the same idea with React Router. Is like, if we're going to change the URL, we need to tell it we're doing it, so it does it for us and then appropriately knows to go update the page for us because the URL changed. So we gotta use their stuff, and they provide 2 ways of doing that. You can use their link component, or you can use their use navigate hook, which is like a function you call, and when you call it, you just tell it where you want it to go. So you can see they give you an example of like, you know, this is just a default HTML nav, and then use our link component. This is like pretty much like an Ahref, but it's the React Router wrapper of an Ahref. But we're using React Bootstrap, and they've got these fancy nav.link things. So we got to figure out, like, can we somehow use these nav links, or do we need to not use the nav links? And is it going to look okay if we don't do that? It's the stuff we're going to need to figure out. For now, I'm just going to use the React Router link and see what it looks like and go from there. So I'm going to go back, and instead of nav.link, I'm going to do link. Oh, it's going to work. Did it work? Did. I don't know why it's not doing it for Bootstrap, but you can see in this case, it auto imported link for me when I hit tab. So you may notice that sometimes when you're like typing something, it knows what it is. You can hit tab and it'll import it for you. Yeah, okay, so for a link, we put the link and then what you want the link to say. So for this first one, we want it to say forecast, and then we want it to go to this path. So when we click the forecast button in the nav bar, we want it to change the URL to forecast because that's where we said for our path to listen to. So 2 equals forecast. And then I'm just I'm gonna comment out that other one, and I'm gonna comment out this other one too for now, just to see what this looks like. So like, actually, let's uncomment this one. So this is the React Router thing that they give us. And then here's the Bootstrap thing that they give us. And one looks pretty good and the other doesn't. Like, so this is the one that gives us the functionality we need. This is the one that looks nice. So can we somehow marry these two? I have to figure that out. It would take me a second. And I don't want to worry about that right now. So we're just going to deal with it looking bad. So I'm going to comment this back out. But let's see if this is going to work. So if it doesn't look that bad. Okay. So let's see what happens. So if we click this. So it changed the URL to /forecast, and then our forecast stuff showed up. And then if we click, that just adds. So this is so this is kind of like a technical detail, and there's a little bit of history that you guys probably don't know about. That you kind of need to know to understand this here. So I'm going to take a minute to talk about it. So on this website here, I don't know what they use to make this website, but notice when I click Best New Music, the entire page is reloading. Or so like when I navigate, notice the browser spinner right here, and I click reviews, like that reloaded the entire page and went to a new page. And it took a minute to do it. So I don't know like what they're using to make this site, but that is considered not ideal to most people, that the whole page is reloading and taking some time to do that. And when you build something in React, which is like newer, and like Angular is like a newer thing, we used to not build pages that way. We used to always have to reload the whole page whenever you wanted to navigate. Because it was like talking to a server and getting the HTML and then like having to do a page refresh. So React and Angular and Vue and all these modern web frameworks are called single page applications. Have you guys heard that term? SPA, single page application. So you may hear that term, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's just one page on the app. It just means that you actually load the page once, and then it doesn't ever have to completely refresh to have multiple pages. So notice when I'm on the root here and I click forecast, note, like watch the bar here, like it didn't change. It didn't reload the whole page. And notice like how quick it was. Like it just like bam, like clicked it, URL changed, added the stuff to the page, and like it didn't refresh the browser. There was no blip for a second. So that's why that's the reason why I want to use the React router link, is because it's the thing that's allowing our page not to refresh. It's the thing that's changing the URL and then having React re-render to then add the forecast stuff. But it didn't require the entire page to reload. It just required React to re-render, which is something that happens like in the browser when React is loaded without it having to like refresh everything. So that distinction of like single page app versus app that has to reload and like the history behind like pages reloading is it's not really something you need to concern yourself too much with. But just know that that's why I'm trying to use React rather than the built-in Ahref stuff, because an Ahref is going to reload the whole page. And that's why React Router is giving us that length. And that's why I'm trying to figure out some way to like mix Bootstrap with React Router, which will just take a second, but like that's the reason why I want to do it, is to just have this be a true single page app rather than like reloading everything whenever you navigate.
Can you give us an example of like a site that's a commonly used site that is built with React?
It's often not content sites. Like Pitchfork is a content site, and like a news site is a content site, and they care more about people like just being able to type something and add an image, or like a marketing site, like a Squarespace site or a Webflow site. Like those are all like, those are content sites. And so the importance of those sites are you can easily add stuff to it without changing code. You don't have to be a coder to get content in there. And then it's actually SEO and like links that are gonna give you those, the like inline, like when I put,
So that's specifically why I was asking, because I'm like
yeah,
thinking, how are these how does a React website show up in search results? Because there's not that link and it's not raw, probably not the content.
yeah,
And
yeah.
in the navigation, so.
Yeah, so there's something called Next.js that'll make a React site be more like a static site. But to answer your question, most people don't use React for like content sites. They use them for web apps. Like,
I can add on to a site, like something within the site.
yeah, or like,
Functionality.
yeah, what you'll notice happens, like what you see most people do is like, so Auth0 is like a thing developers use to do like login stuff, like secure login. This is a marketing website, and this needs to do SEO. And this is a completely different website than the actual app. Like, and that's why you'll see like login completely changes the, well, I'm logging in. So let me log in real quick.
And so it's like a different URL. So
Yes. Yeah, so it's like auth0.com, but then the actual app is like app.auth0.com or whatever. That's a completely different website. It's like completely different. It's gonna feel integrated. It's gonna feel like one.
But you don't have to do it that way, right? Like you can just embed a React app in an actual website
Yeah,
and it doesn't change that URL.
yeah, like with an iframe, or you can do that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's like, probably the differentiator is like on Secret, it's like that is the product versus like a mortgage website where they need marketing content, but an application would necessarily justify for app. So
So a lot of the times, the different technologies have different benefits. So like the reason Auth0 is like, we call it a brochure site, is they don't need to have like build out a whole server, a whole backend. Like there's a lot of web stuff they can use and really simplify it. And it'll make it quick, and it'll make it easier for non-tech people to update that site regularly. But then whenever they need something like a full React site that is connecting to a backend, like they kind of serve separate purposes. So like you'll build something in React whenever you need that, but they will be separate because React kind of is good at living in its own environment, and that was good at living in its own environment, so they'll just make them separate because it's easier to maintain them separately. But they'll just use, similar design language on both to make it feel like it's all part of the same product.
You can embed it though, if you wanted to. You certainly can.
Yeah.
But like, most people are used to at this point, like when they click login, they don't think about the fact that like something just, you went to a completely different URL. Yeah. Trying to think of some other good examples of that.
So like top React sites from this thing are saying like Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, Code Academy, New York Times, Dropbox, Airbnb, from sites built with React.
So with the New York Times, I wonder, because you can, like the URL stuff, so Next.js, I wonder if, is New York Times, do you know if they're using Next.js or like what they,
Yeah.
so Next,
Because I wouldn't think of New York Times as an app,
well, like
if I would.
the crossword and like those things are definitely React,
Oh.
but, so Next.js is a React framework that like wraps React and makes it so that your site, let's just see the showcase, makes it so your site is more similar to like a statically generated site. Yeah, so Hulu is a Next.js app.
Uber, Starbucks, Twitch,
Did you see that?
I'm on Google.
Target's a Next.js app. So with that, I think to your question, I think if you did for some reason want them to be mixed and not separate sites, like you could use Next.js to have some stuff be really static. And then like depending on the need, if something didn't need to be SEO and everything, then you would just do the React stuff. But this is kind of a more, oh yeah, see look, so Auth0 actually is using Next.js. So anyway, this is much more advanced stuff that like we don't really need to worry about learning, but yeah. Orders.com. Okay. No. Again, I think it's helpful for everybody. Okay, so let's just some stuff aside. Okay, well, I mean, actually, so that well, let me show you one more thing. So you can use their link thing, but in the case where you can't use this link, which is often, they provide you a navigate hook. So let me just show that real quick. So React Router DOM provides this thing called use navigate. This is called a custom hook. So anything you import from a React library that has use in front of it, by convention, means it's a custom hook. So the hooks that we've seen so far are the ones built into React, which are use state and use effect. But the whole ecosystem of React has adopted this convention and this style, which is to have other functionality that you need also be hook-like. And so that is where you have this use in front of it. And so you'll import it, and then you'll see like inside your component. So this is like a invoices component. You then do use navigate, and then you get this thing back that you then get the functionality that you want with it. So this is similar to use state, and that you would have imported use state, but from React, not React Router DOM. And then to use state, you call use state, and then it gives you back something, gives you some sort of functionality. So you'll see this a lot, this style. And in this case, use navigate is just giving us the functionality to change the URL of the page. That's all it's doing. They have other hooks, for example, like use params, that will tell you what is in the URL. So like, remember the very first example we gave was, hey, maybe we should, on the forecast page, if you did 73106 and 5, that should maybe be in the URL as like location equals 73106. So if that was in the URL, you can use React Router to say, use, in this case, that's the query. So you'd say use query, and then it'll give you back the value of the query up here. So it would give you back something that had location equals 73106 in it. So yeah, that's some of the other stuff that React Router provides. And that is and those are like hooks. So you'll, so notice like use params, and then they do use params right here. It gives them the params, and then you can just say params.invoice ID. So that would be like if the URL had slash, this is a wildcard, like, so like when we were here and we were like, slash review slash album slash 2shells icons EP, the way that this is matched is like, slash reviews slash albums slash, and then this is a parameter. And so the way it looks is like, album ID. And so what you can do is inside React, you can say use params and grab the album ID param, so that whenever I'm loading this page, I can see, what album are they looking at? Oh, they're looking at 2shells icons EP. So I'm going to query the database for the data related to that and show that on the page. So React not only provides ways to update the URL and conditionally change the way the page looks, but also to ask for the information that's in the URL, which is like the location, potentially parameters, and then potentially a query string. Now, whether or not something should be in the query string versus in the parameter is going to be a constant battle that you have with yourself. And it's just kind of up to you, really. And the way that you decide is like, oh, it's really the same page, but it's just slightly different information that should be displayed. So I'm going to put that in the query string. So like, and that's why you might see on this page, like, it's just the forecast page, but the query is slightly different. So that's why I want it in the query string. But like, it's up to you. It's just what you want to do. So I think, yeah, that's probably enough for today. Any questions or anything at the moment? On the call or here? Okay, so this is it in terms of the new material. So no more new material for the remaining 2 classes. And all we're going to be doing for the next 2, so Wednesday and then Saturday, is just working on like building out this weather app to be that full functionality that I described. So, and it should sort of showcase all the different main stuff you have to do with React that you have to know to be able to do a React app. So Wednesday, we'll just be working on building out this weather app. I recommend that you guys try to change it yourself. Like I can give you guys a list of options, but just like whatever tickles your fancy, like just try it. Like you're building this weather app, like what functionality do you want to add? Do you want it to look a little bit different? Like, do you want it to do anything more? Like just try to tweak it and play with it a little bit. And then Saturday, we'll just sort of break up into groups. I know some of you can't make it in person, so we'll just put anybody that's virtual in sort of like a virtual group together. And then Devin will be here, I'll be here. We'll get another mentor here, and we'll just do a working session and just kind of pair program together to add all that, to complete all that functionality for it. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Your stomach made it hurt.
I'm not gonna get sick. Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
It can be. Okay.
Oh, no, I mean, I can get, I mean, there's other people I can try to get to come.